Hey everybody, welcome to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Langford. The point of this show is to help improve ourselves as dogmen and to raise the quality of the dogs on the end of our lead. So let's settle in, turn the volume up, and let's see if we can't learn a trick or two together from our guests.
One memorable hunt, a friend of mine, Nick Raggio, came down from D.C. to hunt with me, as he does every year. And we hunt. We just hop on the four-wheeler and ride, and John Jimmy would ride with us. And we go about 2 miles on a little bit of asphalt, gravel, and hit old mud roads. And we road hunt for about the last mile, mile and a half. Then we get out and walk hunt. And we hunt him in the morning, and we had some squirrels, but they just weren't moving that good. But he was treeing them, and I'd agreed to meet a guy that has cur dogs later in that afternoon, so we rode out to meet him. At that time, the Garmin on GPS on John Jimmy's Garmin was 12 miles. And so he dumps his fresh dog out, and we take off running. And I could tell John Jimmy wasn't first thing in the morning. He's still ticking right along. And we got out there, and he started slamming squirrels. And he treed up. There was a broken poplar tree. The top of it was broke over and had a bunch of grapevines in it. And he's treed. We knock a squirrel out. He just stay treed. Knock the next one out. Stay treed. And I keep looking. There's still some in there. We shot 6 young squirrels out of that net, or out of that mess. When the 6th one fell, he left the tree, and he ran about 100 feet over and treed again. We shot a squirrel out there. We're laughing, going, man, I can't believe that. It's like he knew, and he stayed treed. I said, you better look. There's another one up there. We shot that one out, and then he went on hunting. And that guy said, I've never seen anything like it. He said, that dog can count. That's the way he was. It's just like he knew how many were up there. If you didn't get the one he was looking at or the one he was focused on, he wasn't leaving the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, welcome back to the Slick Tree Podcast. Today we've got another good old dog episode, and today we are talking to Matt McLane, and we're talking about his legendary dog, John Jimmy. How are you doing today, Matt?
Doing good. Glad to call you, and it's an honor to be on here and have an old farm dog in the company of such great dogs that the other guys have talked about.
Matt, I've just so everybody knows, I've never got to meet Matt, but we have been acquaintances, I feel like, for quite a few years now. Kind of goes back all the way to the good old days of Pirate 4x4, if anybody else knows about it.
Yeah, that and the squirrel haters, and then on to Facebook and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. I've got to ask, how did John Jimmy get his name?
I have no idea. Somebody said it was named after that sub shop, and I'd never heard of Jimmy John's. If I had, I never registered. And I let dogs name themselves. And I've got one named Genius. I've got one named Hoot. One named Flats. Dash, Flats, or Flash. You name all the normal names. And I just looked at him one day, and I started calling him Jim or something. I said, yeah, you look like a John Jimmy. And that's what it's been all his life.
Yeah. What can you tell us about John Jimmy?
He's the best dog I've ever had, and he's the most accurate dog I've ever hunted with. Yeah, just like all dogs, he had faults, but he didn't have enough to, pass him on or quit feeding him. He was in 2007, I had a really nice beagle that died at a young age, which was a whole other story. It got electrocuted in a pond that had a pump that was shorted out while we're out running rabbits. And so I'd always wanted a squirrel dog. I thought, I'm going to switch gears. Started asking around. I ran into a guy that lives near me named Bob Ransom, and he had some Alan Franklin's dogs, and I think they had, some breedings going back and forth. And he said, I've got a litter ready or due. And I said, well, put me down for one. When they were born, Bob called me and said, they're here. Come pick one out. And I went over and looked at them, and they're pups a day or two old. I said, well, I like to call her that when I'm not going to make up my mind, though, until I see them on the ground. So 5 or 6 weeks later, Bob called and said, well, they're weaned. Come pick one. Got over, started talking dogs and everything else. And I said, Bob, if you don't mind, I said, just turn them all loose out in the yard. I want to watch your actions. And he turned the whole litter out. There's probably 6 or 7 in the yard. Some of them are a little bit timid. Some of them are afraid to get away from other dogs. And some would get away, but they're paying attention to the pups. And John Jimmy was a loner from day one. He went across the yard. He was doing his own things, not paying enough attention. And I've always liked an independent dog, and I've always liked an alpha dog. And I thought, well, that dog right there has probably got the best chances of being both. So I picked the same one that I picked the day they're born, but the day they were born, I was just picking by the collar, so I like that red brindle with some chrome. We took him home, and, he's a pup. He don't know anything, just lay around the yard and goof off and chew on sticks and get in trouble and things like that. But he was not very interactive with the other dogs. I still had several other beagles and a yard dog at the time, and he just really wasn't concerned with them. He was mainly concerned with what I did. And we live in a rural area, and if we're home, we let the dogs out of the kennel except for the beagles because they'll run over to the next county. But the cur dogs, stuff like that, if we're outside, they're outside. And he was going to the barn, being around cows and horses, and other dogs, along the road, making him road wise. And I'd ride an ATV, and he'd run along the side of me. So that's how he grew up. I didn't push him hard because he was a pup, and I don't expect anything out of a pup for about the first year. I figured they got one season as a pup season, and then the next season they better show me something. And as summer went on, I got him in June, so he goes in the fall. He's only 5 or 6 months old during season, and he was interested. I took him out probably at least once a week for half a day and just spent time with him in the woods. He didn't do anything. He didn't show me anything. And he did show interest, show promise. I thought, well, as long as he didn't hang around my feet, he's got good brains. He'll figure it out. And the following year, I caught some squirrels in live traps, and I hung them up. He wouldn't bark. He'd just look at them. If I dumped him out of the live trap, he'd chase them. They'd run up a tree. He'd just look at them. And I thought, well, maybe this dog doesn't have it. He doesn't seem too excited about squirrels. Going into fall, he still wasn't started yet, and I had a hunt planned with my cousin in western Kentucky. He lives over around Katie's, near LBL. And so I was on Squirrel Haters, said, hey, I'm headed down that way. And a gentleman by the name of Mickey Spiceland, commented and said, well, if you all want to hunt, I'll meet you for an LBL hunt with my dogs. And I said, man, that'd be great, because I've been out a couple times with dogs, with Bob Ranson's dogs, but it was like summertime with leaves on. We weren't hunting. And dogs a tree, you just had to take their word for it. You couldn't see the squirrel. So my cousin Andy and I went and met Mickey after he got off work. And just like, man, it's awful late in the day. We'll be lucky to just see a few squirrels. I'll tell you what, Mickey, he set the standard for me on how a cur dog should act and handle. That impressed me. Back then, you could road hunt LBL. We met him at the parking area. He pulled one dog out of the box, put a tracking collar, put it back in. Pulled the other dog out, tracking collar, back in. And his dogs don't know the breeding, but they look like Kimmers. They were real light collared, blonde collared dogs. And I tell you what, they're real dogs. We took off out through LBL road hunting. He'd drop one dog off and just go out the road. Dog run over hill and tree. And if it was like over a real brushy area or up a steep rocky bank, he'd honk the horn and say, it's in the hole, Bill. Give me another one. And that dog would pull off the tree, come out to the road, go down the road, and get another one. And I thought, well, that was pretty slick. I never had a dog I'd call back like that. And then when we shot a squirrel, the dogs retrieved him. He'd shoot one squirrel per dog. He'd take that dog back, make the dog carry the squirrel back to the tailgate. He'd put the dog in the box, get the other one out, and we did that till dark. And he said he hunted like that a lot. I don't see how he had any door hinges left in that Toyota truck. I felt like I was an episode of Cops. We jumped in and out of that car so that truck so much, shooting squirrels. And I was like, that is the type of dog I want. And so that was my goal. I thought, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And so progress on into the fall. John Jimmy's still not showing me a whole lot. He just kind of interested, taking him out. I'm putting him in squirrel woods. There's squirrels around. And he's just not doing it. I thought, hey, not all dogs make it. He probably ain't going to make it. I was go get me an elephant wheel tree. And then as the leaves started thinning out, he would go under the tree and just point. He'd look up the tree, and he'd look at me. Look up the tree, and I said, well, we both know there's a squirrel there, so I'd walk in, shoot the squirrel. He gets the squirrel, and I get it, throw it in the bag, go on out. Would not bark. And I asked around, and I can't remember if I messaged or called Mickey Spiceland. I said, hey, this is what's going on. And he said, all right. He said, when that dog does that, you're going into him? I said, yeah. And he said, if there's a squirrel there, you shooting him? I said, yeah. And he said, well, the dog's the one he's taught you to come to him when he looks up a tree. And he said, so you've taught him he doesn't have to bark. He just has to stand there and point. And he said, next time he does that, he said, walk in just a little piece, just far enough where that dog knows you're coming. And he said, just stop like a statue. He said, don't pay attention to the dog. Don't look at him. Don't talk to him. He said, he'll eventually get frustrated enough to bark. And he said, when he does, you take a couple steps, then freeze again like a statue. I thought that makes sense. I went up behind the house. He ran out there staring up the tree, looking at him. And I think the first tree, he didn't catch on. Well, the next tree, he'd bark a little bit. I'd take a step. Bark a little bit, take a step. About the third or fourth tree, he was treeing. He learned I wasn't coming to him unless he was barking a tree. And after that, I started hunting regular. And the thing is, I'm the only person around my area that has a squirrel dog. And I hunt all the time, so I didn't have any other dogs to go by. I didn't have any other dogs to compare him with or run him with or anything. So I'm learning on my own, and he's learning. And by mid-season, I couldn't believe the transformation that dog made. I mean, just the amount of squirrels he was treeing and how good he was doing it. And one of the biggest things I said earlier, he's the most accurate dog. If I saw a squirrel in a tree and he didn't tree, he just kind of maybe throw a couple barks, wasn't really sure. I just act like I didn't see it, keep on going. I said, hey, I'm not coming to you unless you're treed solid. And I think that helped, but that's the way he was all his life. He was an accurate dog. There's times, he missed squirrels. There's times, every dog has bad days, but overall, he's the most accurate one I've ever hunted with.
How would you describe his hunt style, like as far as his nose and the way he would hunt for you?
He had a nose like a bird dog. He could win squirrels, easily 100 feet. And one of the things that really amazed me, I was riding to my friend's house to go get a hay tedder, just a small one, 2-basket tedder. So I was pulled behind my four-wheeler. So John Jimmy's running down the hollow behind me, and it's like 2.5 miles down to Adams. And we're going down through there, and just as far as I could see down there, I saw a squirrel cross the road, run up the bank, go up an apple tree. And this hay season, middle of July, I thought this would be a good test. We got to right where that squirrel crossed the road. He never even slowed down. He made a hard left, ran up on the bank 150 feet, slammed that apple tree and bark a tree. And I thought, man, that dog was running 12, 13 miles an hour down the hard road, and he slammed to that thing like he saw it. That amazed me, the nose he had on him. For squirrel, that was great. Early on coon hunting, it was annoying because he would wind a coon and wouldn't show you the tree it went up. So he's barking. You're like, well, I can look where the wind's going. So there's a coon somewhere over there. But that doesn't do me any good. I'm not going to shine all these 100 trees around here trying to find it. It's like, you got to show me which tree. And as he got older, he figured that part out. Nose, as far as hunt, he was all day steady run. I mean, the way I hunted him off a four-wheeler and the miles I put on him, he wasn't a sprinter. He was just an all-day runner. He would run circles. He was a circle-type dog. In West Virginia, you all scare me to death. You all talk about these 800-yard dogs. If I had an 800-yard dog, I'd have to sell him somewhere out west, because in West Virginia, where I live, 800 yards is a long way and a lot of hollows across. Steep or rocky. I don't want a dog getting out that deep unless it's on a coon track. And it better be on a track, not looking for one.
Mm-hmm.
But so he generally was within 200 yards circle. And like I said, I'd road hunt him. Coon hunting, I mainly walk hunt him because I want him to go in and cover more ground, just not right alongside the roads. Because road hunting, he'd hunt tighter because I was pushing him harder, moving faster with the ATV.
Mm-hmm.
But 200 yards, but when he hit a track, I mean, especially in like February in a rut, I mean, I remember one track he went 1.5 miles. I'm like, man, I'm going to have to call my wife to come get me to get back to my truck. I mean, we covered some ground, so he would run the track. But as far as hunt, a couple hundred yards. He had on gray squirrel, he just had a squirrel bark. You could tell. On coon and fox squirrel, he had a locate. So if we're out squirrel hunting and I hear that locate and fall into a chop, I'm like, that's a fox squirrel, probably not a daytime coon. And we don't have a lot of fox squirrels around here. And you go in, people are like, how'd you know that? I said, listen to his bark. You can tell. On coon, he had a real nice locate, had a loud mouth. It was really good mouth for cur. I've heard some that were louder. I've had some that were louder, but he was on the upper end when he was young. Of course, he got older, his voice faded. Just to a real hoarse, raspy chop. Far as hunting, he was an independent dog. Even when I hunted him with other dogs, he didn't care what those dogs did. As a matter of fact, he was a little bit jealous of me, and I'll get into that. But I would take him out with my friend's coon hounds, and one coon hound was good hound, the other was just kind of a me too dog. If my friend's good hound treed a coon, John Jimmy would go, but he wouldn't back him. He'd just stay back 30, 50 feet and watch like, yep, he got a coon. Now, if John Jimmy got a coon, that was his coon. And he never was ill on the tree, but he would posture enough the bandit would stay back off of him and not pull up beside of him with paws on the wood. Hunting by himself, which most time it was, his winding ability, I would know generally where the coon was in the tree, because when I got there, he would go up, tap the tree with his front paws to make sure he showed me which one. Because when he was young, he would kind of just mill around. Because I walk in, he said, well, there's a coon. And I'd just stand there and like a statue until he went over and tapped the tree. Then I'd walk in, shine it, and knock the coon out. So he would tap the tree, and he would back over. And I'd tell the guy with me, or whoever was with me, I said, shine the right-hand side of that tree. I said, that's where the coon is. You see it? I said, no, the dog knows where it is. I said, he's sitting right under the coon waiting for us to knock it out. And he was literally right under the coon just about every time. He wasn't bouncing off the tree trunk. He wasn't a hard treeing dog. Matter of fact, that was probably one of the faults. He was lacking a little bit of tree, but he made up for it in brains, and he did what I wanted him to. He called me to the tree, and he showed us games. So I was perfectly content with that.
How would you describe his conformation as far as just the way he was built, his head near set, and that kind of stuff?
Uh, he had a lot of the. He's bred out of Franklin's Thunder Sport and Alan Franklin's dogs. And back then, everybody called them street bred dogs. And they had kind of a snippy muzzle and kind of folded over ears. Weren't long, weren't short, but they were kind of a little bit erect. Barrel chested, had a well sprung rib cage. He was muscled to the point that people were like, man, that dog looks like a bodybuilder. I was like, well, he didn't have any facts. I run the wheels off of him. Had good leg length. He was probably in the low to mid 50-pound range in his prime. And just had stamina. Like I said, there's times we'd road hunt him, put 22 miles on him, during a squirrel hunt throughout the day, and then go home, eat dinner, and then take him out that night and coon hunting for a few hours. The only conformation fault that he had wasn't a major fault, but as of just preference, his toes were longer than I preferred. I like a dog with good tight toes, like a cat foot, and he had longer toes, which lent him to having longer nails because he wasn't wearing them off running. And there's a couple times I had toe issues with him over the years because a toenail would get twisted or something, and had to lay him up for a week or so till that healed.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he was had good teeth, good head set. Said I don't think he's a nice looking dog. Of course, that's my opinion.
You said he was red brindle with some chrome?
Yeah.
Thinner coat, or?
Yeah, he had a pretty thin coat, and it's funny because as he got older, my wife, I've got a kennel, and each dog has their own dog house, and I keep them stuffed with straw. And the dog houses are under on a deck under a roof, and I pile straw up on top, and the temperatures in there are warm. They don't want to come out to eat. A lot of times they're just perfectly content laid in that doghouse in the deep of winter, especially if it's really nasty. My wife worries so much about him, she would go buy him coats to put on. And so he'd be running around the neighborhood with a lime green coat or orange coat or whatever, and I'm like, I'd see like coat stuffing hanging off the barbed wire on the bottom row of the barbed wire fence. She's like, he keeps tearing these up. I was like, well, I'm glad the coat tears off of him, because if it didn't, he'd get hung up the fence and might die. But yeah, so he had a real thin coat.
How old John Jimmy end up living to be?
Well, 2007 till last year is 23. So what's that making? 15, 17. Yeah, 15-ish.
Yeah.
And buried him on Good Friday last year. I came home that Thursday, and he retired when he was about 10, and something happened, and he went deaf over a course of a year. And once he went deaf, he lost all his confidence, and he wouldn't hunt out of eyesight of me. So you could walk him through the woods, which I did, just to keep him hunting. And he'd show you a few squirrels here and there, but he'd lost a lot. And so his last 5 years, he just spent as a yard dog. If every now and then he'd get excited and run over the hill and tree, but on Good Friday, I was off work Good Friday. That Thursday, I came home, and he was standing out in the yard acting confused. I thought, there's something ain't right. And I went and checked him, and it looked like he'd had a stroke. And went in, asked my wife, I said, you seen him? She's like, yeah, he's just standing there at the back door where he always stands, because she feeds him treats throughout the day. And I said, something's wrong. So I took him inside and put him in bed and checked him. I said, I don't think he's going to recover from this. And the next day, he hadn't gotten any better, so I had the day I dread.
Mm-hmm.
Had to take care of that. But yeah, he lived a grand old life.
Did you ever hunt with the dogs he was out of any?
No, his pedigree, which I'm not real big on pedigrees because if I don't know the dogs, they don't really stick in my mind. But on the top side, he was Franklin's Lone Ranger, which is out of Franklin's Thunder, and Franklin's Jukebox Julie. And those are pretty infamous dogs and really top producers. On the bottom side, it was Franklin's Sally, which is out of Johnson's Cheater and Schmucker's Bell. And I never hunted with any of them, and I don't think I ever saw a Lone Ranger. And I did see Sally, because that's, it was the dam had the litter.
Mm-hmm.
But I've hunted with a lot of other similar bred dogs, and you could see the characteristics. And matter of fact, listen to the podcast, listen to Alan Franklin talk, and listen to Mark Morrison talk. You've got Alan talking about Thunder, and Mark talking about Apache. My wife and I were sitting there listening, and we're just like, yep. They would say some of those traits, and you're like, yep, that's it. That's where they got them. A lot of similarities of those dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun. Just the whole point of this series kind of started out as just kind of a way to kind of do breeding research and just kind of get to know the dogs that are in so many of these pedigrees, and just make it an accessible way for everybody to learn about them. I've sure enjoyed it. Did you coon hunt John Jimmy much?
Yeah, he was a coon dog. I mean, he wasn't the best coon dog ever hunted, but he'd show you coons. I've hunted with hounds that had more nose and more leg than him, but like I said, he still showed us a lot of coons, and even in tough conditions, our tough conditions when it's about 15 degrees, 17 degrees, and a powder snow. And you can see the coon tracks, but apparently the dogs really struggle to run those tracks. And then if you throw in the rut, where the boars are really covering the ground and tapping trees, it can make for some long nights because the coon can outrun the dog. By the time the dog catches him, he's already made it back home. John Jimmy was silent on the track. As he got older, he became a little bit more open on coon. Very seldomly, when he barked on squirrels, he was treed. But so he would open up a little bit, but he wasn't mouthy, he wouldn't babble a lot in the track. He just yip every now and then. And I talked back to him. We were covered up with coyotes, and they would come in on us, and you could hear them a couple hundred yards away going through the dry leaves. And so I just try to keep him in earshot, and I'd yell at him and encourage him. And the main thing I was doing was letting the coyotes know there's a human down there, so they never came in all the way on us and caused any problems. Which a lot of dogs I've had and I've hunted with, when coyotes get around you like that, the dogs will pull in.
Mm-hmm.
And they won't get out of your sight because they're afraid of the coyotes. And he never really seemed to care. He just kept on running the track. And I'm like, ugh. Yeah, I was afraid he's going to get caught one day, so I'd be out running the track with him, trying to keep him in earshot and yelling encouragement. I guess
cheering him on.
He never got caught by one.
Yeah. Did you ever end up breeding him?
No, I never did. One thing I never had a female that I thought, there was times I thought, really like to have the blood out of him. But then I'm really critical of all my dogs and all my animals, even myself. But, just like, he's got this fault, he's got that fault. And do I want another generation with that? And, of course, you look around to other guys, you're like, man, I sure would like to have a dog like that. He doesn't have those faults. So, no, I never did breed him. Kind of wish I would have, glad I didn't type thing, because he never was ill, but he was borderline. Like, if he was bellied up on a tree and another dog tried to push up side of him, he'd flash his teeth. And so that could start a dog fight real quick. He was in dog fights. Most of them were just yard dogs because we'd be riding somewhere in a four-wheeler and he's running alongside and somebody's dog would run out of a yard and jump on him. And I always felt bad for those dogs. I'm like, you shouldn't have done that. Sorry about your dog. When he was young, he treed a groundhog down below the house, an apple tree, and I knocked it out to him. He was wallowing on the ground. He was a pup. He probably wasn't a year old. And somebody had dropped off an old black hound, and it was about starved out, so people were feeding it, trying to give it away. And we called him Bones, and Bones heard all that commotion. Well, he came up to see what was going on, and the hound was not ill at all. But John Jimmy got ill over that groundhog and jumped on that dog. And that dog was an older dog, mature dog. And that dog smeared him all over that hollow. And I was like, yeah, get you some of that. That'll teach you. Well, one thing it taught him was how to fight. He never lost another dog fight after that.
Yeah.
And he's had dogs jump on him. And I've never seen a dog that they couldn't bite him. He was slick. He would spin out, and every time he hit him, the fur would fly, and he never got bit in a dog fight. And I thought, I've never seen a dog that slick. And he's the same way with coons. He rarely ever got bit by a coon. He was just always slick and wise, but I guess that's the way it is when you raise as a farm dog.
Yeah. How was he around the cattle and the livestock?
He didn't care about cattle, horses, anything unless I did. So if I was trying to sort cattle or move them, he would jump in there trying to help, and which usually made a mess of things because he would put too much pressure on them. And finally, I would get him to verbally hold. And he figured out what I was doing, and he would block for me and help me, but he was no cattle dog. He was just assisting. And then once I get the cattle going through the gate, I'd say, get them. And he'd go and nail them in the hocks and put them in high gear, which he loved that. That's the best part. As far as chickens, never bothered. House cats, he's pretty hard on them. And I'm pretty sure I had him broke off, but there's a few of them that weren't quick enough over the years. Like I said, it's overall good around the house and farm dog. Another funny story. We used to, every fall, we go down to Kentucky. We still do it. And meet, and we call it Squirrel Palooza. And it's just the same bunch of friends and family all get together and hang out, and we squirrel hunt for a weekend with dogs. Got several other guys with dogs involved, so just not relying on my dog. And we used to go around Park Mammoth, Kentucky, near Bowling Green. My friends Nick and Nate Noble had a shooting resort down there and had about 3,000 acres. And they just gave us around the place, said, anywhere you want, have at it. And we would go down there and squirrel hunt. I remember one year we had different people rotating in and out, but we just had one dog. It was John Jimmy. We hunted Friday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, and Sunday morning. And we had 64, 65 squirrels in 2 full-day hunt. And that's flat out putting them on the ground, especially with just one dog.
Yes, it is.
That was a banner year right there.
Sounds like a good one.
Oh, yeah. And then my one cousin never squirrel hunted with the dogs. So he said, we're going to squirrel hunt. And he brought up like a half a box of shells and a 12 gauge. Well, Friday afternoon, he was like, somebody's going to loan me some shells. I'm going to go to town to buy some. he didn't realize how much shooting we were going to do. Yeah, so the Squirrel Palooza became an annual tradition, and we still carry it on today. Now we have it out towards Cadiz, Kentucky, where my one cousin lives. That way he's got properties he can hunt on, and we can hunt LBL if we want to, if we have a lot of people. But while we're hunting Katie's one year. One of our friends, Chris Gogus, I hunt with a muzzleloader quite a bit, and my cousin hunts the muzzleloader quite a bit. And muzzleloading shotgun, and a lot of times I have a 32 muzzleloader Crockett rifle. And we just had John Jimmy, and we're knocking squirrels out. I never paid attention, and Chris laughed. He said, "That dog knows how to load that gun." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Watch him." He said, "We knock a squirrel out." He said, "You put the squirrel in the vest." He said, "That dog stands right there and watches you." He says, "Powder, patch, ball." And as soon as I put the ramrod up, he would take off and go tree another one. So we started watching. We're like, yep. And then we had a big time laughing about that. He's like, "Yep, powder, patch, ball, ramrod, go." So he was always a smart and observant dog, paying attention to stuff like that.
Those black powders you run. Tell me more about them.
The black powder guns.
Yeah.
I've got a 10 gauge black powder shotgun, and it's a modern gun. Has chrome line barrels, and the first couple shots it doesn't have a lot of power, and then after the few shots, the bores get some fouling or can build some pressure. It hits hard. It's got an open choke though, so it's a cylinder bore choke. So effective range on it's 25 yards on squirrel, maybe 30 if you're lucky. My cousin has one that's like an 1860s model 12 gauge, and he's had a couple of them. One of them just got in such disrepair, he just made a wall hanger out of it, and he bought another one, and he shoots a 12 gauge. He seems to have more range with that, I guess tighter bore, than my 10 gauge. The black powder, the muzzleloader I shoot is a Traditions Crockett rifle, which I got off of a guy in Oklahoma, and I can't think of his first name. I'm pretty sure his last name was Rogers. He was on Squirrel Haters, and he talked about he's going to get rid of it, and I said, I'd be really interested in that. And he messaged me a price, and I sent him the money, and he sent me the rifle. And I didn't realize what a blessing he sent me. That is probably one of the most accurate rifles I've held. It's got a set trigger, and you can flat out, if you can see it, you can shoot it. And I've had a lot of people talk about they still talk about some of the shots I made. Bob Ranson, who's the breeder of John Jimmy's parents, we were down the bottom of a hollow, big steep hollow, and then in the bottom of the hollows, the trees grow a lot taller to get to the sunlight. And they treed, and we couldn't get around and see anything. Just one of those trees you just couldn't get a good look at. And I'm studying that tree, and I told him, I said, I think I see a squirrel's paw wrapped around the edge of that tree. I said, and we walked around there, couldn't see the squirrel, too much stuff in the way. I said, well, I'm going to shoot that thing right in the paw and get it to move. And I backed up on the bank, and it was probably 80, 90-foot shot, and cracked, and that squirrel moved. It slid around the tree, and my friend knocked out the shotgun. And he ran over and grabbed it and got from the dogs, tossed in his vest. I said, pull that thing out of there, and I want to see its left front paw. When I did, its left front paw been just about shot off. And Bob Ranson still talks about that to this day. He says, I made a shot. That I made some other ones. A friend Nick Raggio came in, and I had a little monocular. John Jimmy was treed, and there was a big broad limb that went out over the road. I could not see the squirrel. All I could see was its ear. Looking through my monocular, probably 30 yards. And I said, I know where it is. I said, I'm pretty sure that little triangle sticking up is its ear. And I said, if its ear is sticking up, its eye is. I said, it's peeking over looking at us. I said, get ready. I'm going to shoot. I said, I'm either going to hit the limb or skip one across top of his head. I cracked. That squirrel just reared up, flopped out, and it didn't even penetrate the skull. It just dented the skull, hit it right above the eye. And he still talks about to this day. He said, "Man," he said, "that's one of the best shots I've ever seen." I told him, I said, "I was just glad somebody was there to witness it." Usually something like that, nobody's around to see it.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever going to believe it.
Yeah.
Yes,
What ignition systems do those guns run?
I run percussion. Yeah, I wouldn't want to squirrel hunt the flintlock. Too much going on and happens too fast.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, how'd you get into hunting with dogs? What's your background in them?
I've always been a dog person. Just grew up around dogs, but we never really had hunting dogs. I always wanted to. And in high school, a friend of mine named Carlos Taylor had a brace of rabbit dogs, and he had a little Jip that was a fine rabbit dog. And he had a young male that he would run him when she jumped him, but he wasn't really going to hurt himself out there hunting looking for one himself. And we talked about that, and Carlos said, "Well, come along, go with me one day." So I went with Carlos and Brad, and we shot a few rabbits, had a good time. And I thought, I'm going to get some rabbit dogs someday. And I hunted with different people and different dogs. And at that time, well, I lived with my parents. We just didn't have a spot for a kennel. My mom was like, "You're not having any yapping dogs out of the house in a small yard." And so when I got on my own, I was like, "I'm going to get rabbit dogs." And my wife was like, "I don't want any yapping dog. That's all those beagles do is yap." And my cousin Andy, we went hunting around Christmas time. He used to come in every Christmas and visit family. And he found somebody selling beagles, and he went and bought a beagle. I can't remember what he paid, $150 for a great dog. And I brought it home. I got home late that evening after visiting, and I came up, got my wife up, and I said, "Hey, come on and see what Andy got me." She said, "That better not be an animal." And I opened up the garage door, and that little puppy came in, and she's like, "Oh, he's so cute." And we've had dogs ever since. That's been 20-some years ago. And had mostly rabbit dogs. We've always had dogs, but as far as I still keep rabbit dogs and cur dogs, I generally keep one or two at a time. I've got two right now. One of them, he would show a few squirrels, but he never did really make a good squirrel dog. Then he got Lyme disease, and he's got something going on with him now neurologically, and he looks like he's cold, but it's not even cold outside. He'll shiver and his head shakes and stuff. And I guess we didn't catch the Lyme disease in time, and it just caused some sort of damage. So he's just a yard dog now, hangs around and doesn't do much. And I've got one that came from Dane, England, through Brandon Fowler. Brandon posted a litter on the Facebook page, the Cur Dog Facebook page, and I messaged Brandon. I said, "What type of dogs are they?" I said, I've hunted with them, know the both parents, and he described the parents, and he was like, "Yeah, they don't hunt out as far as I like and stuff like that." And that's how they hunt. He described them. I thought, you just described the exact type of dog I like. I don't want an 800-yard dog. Give me those 200-yard dogs all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And so we arranged to get that little dog from Dane, and it took us a couple months to get it a ride. And Brandon was traveling to, I think, Georgia to breed his female, and he dropped it off at a friend's house near Memphis at a truck stop, which we jokingly referred to as a shady dog deal. And you're meeting some stranger in a truck stop parking lot to hand off a dog. And then the following weekend, I went down to my friend's house and picked Hoot up. And Hoot, he's just a little 30-pounder, but he is probably the squirreliest dog I've ever seen. This dog, when I get home from work, he's barking, seeing my truck come up the road. He runs out, meets me at the truck, barks a couple times, and takes off running, sprinting over the hill, and he's treed usually less than a minute. So I've got to go set my lunchbox down, go down there and go to the tree, pet him up, and that dog, he is tree-minded and squirrel-minded as any I've seen. So I think he's going to be a good one. He had his pup season last year, and he showed us some squirrels. I think this year he should really turn it on.
Yeah. I'll be looking forward to hearing about his progress.
Yeah.
See what kind of trouble he can get into. I think he's already been on a wanted poster or something like that.
Oh, yeah. He tore up my neighbor's yard flag. I guess that was too much for him to take. See that flag blowing in the winds? He demolished it. And my wife texted me a picture of torn up flags, said, "You owe somebody a flag." So I texted the neighbor, said, "Whose flag's this?" And one neighbor said, "It's ours." I said, "Well, have your wife pick one out on Amazon or wherever." And I said, "Just send it to me and I'll have it shipped to your house." And they, "Nah, don't worry about it. His old flag, don't worry." And I was like, okay. So I put a picture of Hoot on Facebook, and I asked him, I said, "Could you chop a pirate hat and eye patch on this dog? Make it look like a pirate." And so several people did, and one guy was really good. And so I took that picture, and my neighbor's name's Karen. And so I had a picture of him wearing a pirate hat and an eye patch, and over top of it, I had a yard sign made, a yard flag. It said, "I captured Karen's flag." And so I got the stand and the flag, and I just went up there, staked it in her yard. And a couple hours later, Larry called, and he's laughing. He said, "I guess you returned the flag." I said, "Well, you wouldn't pick what you wanted." And I said, "So I picked one." He said, "Oh, we love it." He said, "It's great."
Sounds like some good neighbors.
Oh, yeah, we got great neighbors where we live.
Yeah.
Some other comments about John Jimmy. I'd never seen a dog that you could call off a tree until I went out to Mickey Spiceland. Well, I taught John Jimmy that, and on a squirrel tree, I could call him off. A coon tree, if I tried to call him off, he would answer back and tree harder. And I don't know how many times I'd be in the house or be out in the garden or something, especially summertime, you're wearing shorts, no shirt, and forget to put him up for dark. And I'd hear him down the holler, ringing tree. And I'm like, oh, no, I got to go put pants on and boots and go down there and get him. And so I'd try to call him, and I'd yell at him, and he'd just tree that much harder answering back. I'm like, yeah, I guess go get my pants and boots on. And so it was in the summertime, about the time the sweet corn's ripe. Nobody wants to eat coons under sweet corn. And he treed down over in the hall behind the house. I thought, well, I got to get rid of this problem. So I took a little 22 with me and had those CB shorts. That coon's laid out in the low limb, just kind of seemed annoyed the dog was there. So I popped that thing, and it just fell right out. And I thought, that's kind of odd. Usually it takes 3 or 4 shots to get one to roll out, especially as big as that thing was. And that coon fell down the nettle weeds. Nettle weeds about waist high. Well, John Jimmy comes through there like a bird dog. He was jumping up, looking over the nettle weed, trying to find that coon. That coon jumped up and grabbed him and bit him on the collar. And it had a hold of his collar. And he was backing up, trying to knock the thing off. So he was running in reverse and slamming that coon against a tree. Then he would come by me, and I'd try to kick it off of him. And he spun a couple circles there trying to get that coon off of him. He finally did. And they went down to the nettleweed fighting down in the creek. And he fought that coon down the creek. And I thought, man, normally he's killed him by now. I got down the creek, and that coon was standing up on his hind legs, and John Jimmy put the death chomp on him. He grabbed him right by the neck and the shoulders. And normally once he does that, you can hear the bones popping. He'll shake him, and the coon will be beating off his ribs, just fuck, 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 fuck. Well, he grabbed that one, and he shook with all his might, and the coon was so big, the coon's back feet never left the ground. It was just standing there with his head shaking. And I was like, whoo, you got yourself one here. And he fought that thing on down the hall, and he finally killed that thing. And he looked at me, and he said, next time I shoot it and you fight it. Yeah, that was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
When John Jimmy was young, I didn't care what he treed. Just tree me something and do it right, and we'll work on that later. Just got to get you treeing. He went through that phase where he didn't have a whole lot of confidence to run track at night. And every time people call me and say, hey, I got a chicken raccoon trying to get my chicken pen, I'd take him down there. He was young enough, he just didn't have the confidence to take out on the track and go get it. So he started treating possums. I'd pet him up and just go on. I wouldn't knock him out to him. Then as he got treeing coon real good and got his confidence built up and started figuring out what that was all about, I broke him off possums. And I never had to whip him or anything. I'd just go into the tree, shine the light, see the possum, and I'd just scold him, say, not what we're looking for. Come on, let's go. And just walk off. He'd follow me and he'd go tree a coon. I did that a few times. He quit treeing possums. And about every boy out in the ridge has hunted with me, and John Jimmy. Matter of fact, when John Jimmy was young, I used to tell his boys to just go to the house and get him, take him hunting. And they did that for 1 year, and they had a grand old time. And the next year, John Jimmy decided he wasn't going to hunt for anybody but me. And I'd call them and say, how's it going? They're like, well, he's not hunting that good. So then we started just trying to figure out what was going on. And I figured out he would only hunt for me. And I said, well, I can't loan him out anymore. But those boys always squirrel hunt and coon hunt, rabbit hunt with me, and we all fish together. Teenagers, and the youngest one of the bunch was probably 11 years old at the time. And Dakota said, hey, will you take Zach and I coon hunting? I said, yeah, come on out, let's go. They came out the house, and we were walking over on a neighbor's farm, and John Jimmy struck a track, took it down the deepest, nastiest hollow in the whole place. It was just one of those hollows you had to slide down your butt for 100 yards, get to the bottom, then climb hand over fist, just pull yourself up. It was so bad that I had to hoist those boys up some of the rock ledges using a dog lead, or get up under them and lift them up and climb up on roots. He went over to a clear cut, and unfortunately, he must have beat the coon to the tree. As we got there was not a coon in that tree. This is the kid's first coon hunt, and I'm like, man, we just went through that, and plus we got to get back out of here, go right back through that stuff to get on the other side. I was feeling pretty bad that I didn't show the boy coon on his first coon hunt. He took it in stride, and as we were leaving, we were walking out along the edge of the neighbor's hayfield, and I saw John Jimmy looking up, and I knew it was a possum. And I normally, when he did that, I just kept on walking, and he'd go on behind me. He wouldn't tree. And I told Zach, I said, I think there's something up in that tree way he's acting. I said, shine the light up there. There's old possum sitting up there in a sassafras tree. It probably wasn't 15 feet above us. And he's laughing. Man, that's a possum, man. And of course, started shining light on, get excited. The dogs, John Jimmy started getting excited and barking at that possum. Zach's like, can we knock it out? And I said, yeah, sure, knock it out. He knocked it out and wore that possum around there a little bit. And old Zach, he was tickled to death. We got a possum, and I was tickled to death. Next time I went coon hunting, I didn't realize there were many possums in the country. He treed everyone we came to. He holed a couple of them. I was like, oh no. I bet it took me a month to get him broke off possums. Yeah. But after that, he would not tree them or run them in a hole. But if he caught them on the ground, you'd be out coon hunting, and you'd hear either the antenna clicking on the collar, or hear his toenails or something. You hear him coming back, you're like, why's he coming back here? He'd come up to me and just spit a possum out at my feet and turn around and go back coon hunting. I said, well, at least he's not treeing. I'll have to go into him.
Yeah, that hoss dog I had, I never really broke him off possum. I couldn't. I mean, that dog, he liked to tree a coon, but he loved to tree a possum. I tried everything I could to try to break him off of him. And about the closest I could ever get was if he would catch them, and just like you were saying, he'd deliver them to hand. He would never hardly bark at them there towards the end, but if he could catch one, he'd dang sure bring it back to you.
Yeah, that's the way he got. And another thing, where John Jimmy's a farm dog, I never competition hunted him. I ran beagle field trials for years. Just didn't appeal to me. I've attended some WTDA hunts in West Virginia, and like the guys, great bunch of guys. I love hanging out with dogs. I'm just like, it's just not my thing anymore. I was fortunate enough to go out and cast with Mountain State Apache. I'm drawing a blank. Chuck Loudon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, got to go out with I'm pretty sure it was Apache. Wasn't Geronimo. It was Apache and Chuck Loudon up at Buchanan. Really nice dog. Great guys. Think the world of Chuck from times I met him. But John Jimmy wasn't that style dog, where he's a little bit quirky and I didn't distrust him around other dogs, but I knew if one chested up on him or something like that, it would happen. And the other thing is, where he was a farm dog, he'd lay right in the yard and there'd be squirrels at the edge of the yard and he didn't care. In that dog kennel, there's squirrels cross over top that dog kennel all the time. A lot of times he just lay there, he just sit up there and look and watch them go by, never barked. But if I walked out of the house with a long gun or that Garmin or a dog lead, he would spin circles, bark, take over the hill and tree. He knew it's time to hunt. So he knew, like if I was out in the woods picking mushrooms, digging ramps, catching bait, or doing stuff like that, I wasn't hunting. He wouldn't tree. If he did, it'd just be one cross, but he wouldn't go out and pursue game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I signed up for a WTDA hunt and offered to guide, because I've got plenty of good places nearby. Took a cast out, and I told him, I said, I don't think my dog will hunt. And I was like, I probably should have brought a boat oar or empty gun case or something, because he knows I'm not hunting. And we went out in a cast, 2-hour cast. Those guys had nice dogs. They treed. John Jimmy just walked around like an old house dog with me. Those dogs treed. He'd walk in, look at them, just shrug and go on about his business. And so that was the only time he ever went on a competition hunt. And probably in the last half hour, we're going around a steep bank, had a deer path on it, and the guy had a young male dog. John Jimmy's the head on the path, and the guy had a young male dog. Went by and passed him. When he did, he bumped into him. And John Jimmy lit into that dog and took him down over the briars. And I called him off of him. He came right off of him just as soon as I yelled at him, but he still grabbed hold of that dog. And I said, scratch him, put him on a lead. And I said, I'm not doing that again. He's just not that type of dog. Just an old farm dog.
Yeah. Sounds like he was a fun one, though.
Oh, yeah. We had a good time.
Yeah, I always enjoyed keeping up with these antics on Facebook and everything else.
Yeah, it was when he passed away, I had friends call him. My cousin called me, and I buried him there behind the house, and I walled a big old rock, put it on top of his grave, and went inside, loaded my double barrel muzzle loading shotgun, walked down there to that rock and shot 2 up in the tree. I said, well, I just fired the last 2 shots. They were the best hunting dog I ever had. And that evening, my cousin saw that where I posted that, and he called me and he said, Matt, I'm sitting there drinking a beer. He said, getting ready to fire off 2 shots for John Jimmy. So he blasted 2 shots off his back porch, his muzzle loading shotgun, and talked about what a good time we've had with that dog. And we talked about it. And I thought, as you think of vacations and stuff, the money you spend on vacations and doing things, I said, if we had to pay for all the good times we ever had that dog, I said, we'd had to pay over $1 million for all the fun we've had. He said, you're every bit right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was how much pleasure those old dogs bring to us.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I don't know if I'd ever thought about it quite like that before.
Yeah, if you had to pay somebody, you're like, hey, I'm going to pay you to take me out and have that level of fun that you all have, how much you'd be willing to pay?
Mm-hmm.
You think you go to the beach, how much you spend there? You go out and guide a fishing trip, you know all about that.
Mm-hmm.
You go out in charters. Okay, a good bird dog hunt. And you thought about, man, this is something we got to enjoy anytime we wanted and enjoyed it every time. Even on the the years that we had, just awful years, just had to, eke out a few squirrels that are squirrel palooza. The weather's horrible, blowing wet snow. We still always had a grand old time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, Matt, I sure appreciate you giving us your time and coming on the podcast and telling us about John Jimmy.
yeah, I appreciate your calling and interviewing me. And like I said, I'm honored to be in such great company of great dogs, dog men. And I'm just old hillbilly with a farm dog.
Well, everybody, take care and keep wearing out that boot leather. I just want to give everyone that's listening a sincere thank you. Getting this podcast going has been a project. I really hope you're enjoying it, and if you don't mind, give the show a good rating and review wherever you're listening to it at, or share it on your social media to help get some traction. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to your feedback.